We're looking at nothing less than a transformation of our economy. Limited resources, climate change, plastic waste in the oceans and microplastic in our bodies. These are just some of many critical developments that endanger our existence in the form that we know today. Let us look at one example, the emissions gap report of the United Nations. The chart shows the amount of realized and projected global warming gas emissions from 2010 to 2050. You can see that none of the current political plans or scenarios leads to an emission reduction. And you can also see that staying under 2 degrees of warming, or even 1.5 degrees, would require a very strong reduction immediately. Cutting up to 50% of climate-relevant emissions out of all our activities within a span of 10 years is not impossible, but very challenging and nothing less than a transformation. Every year that we lose doing nothing will bring us closer to the point of impossibility. Not that the world will disappear after warming up by more than 2 degrees, but it will not be the same world anymore and has an enormous potential of change, migration, conflict and suffering. The global warming issue was only one example. Another one is that we will run out of resources. Mankind has grown from 3 billion people to almost 8 billion by today, and will reach an estimated 10 billion by 2050. In addition, the consumption of resources per person is also growing. And we cannot run our linear economic system of take, make and waste from a finite planet indefinitely. Now there are some people questioning these developments. My observation is that ignorance and denial of the problem is rather driven by psychological effects than by a real questioning of the facts themselves. Some psychologists argue that climate change is perceived by many as an existential threat and triggers reactions that are known in existential psychology. Typical reactions to this threat include behavioral patterns that you may recognize. Some people endure the situation and do absolutely nothing about it because they feel completely helpless. Others avoid the depressing news and discussions and get busy with distracting activities. And a third group overcompensates by active or even aggressive denial of the threat because this somehow makes them and their peers feel immortal. So it is important that we share the difficult news in a constructive and careful manner to trigger the adequate reaction. After decades of work on this topic, one of the most respected climate scientists, Professor Schellenhuber, admitted that we have failed to develop a positive vision beyond all the negativity such as don't fly or don't eat meat. And he said, "We need a new narrative which can move and excite, one of circular economies, decent consumption and cities that are not sacrificed to cars but allow for a sustainable urban living. A narrative that shows opportunities to create our own future." The known sustainability issues, with climate change being the most visible one, will generate a growing and increasingly strong pressure on our economic system. We need to find better answers, politicians, companies, consumers, all together. From an industry perspective, Ray Anderson, the founder of Interface Flow, once said, "Business and industry is the major culprit causing the decline of the biosphere, but it is also the only institution that is large enough and powerful enough to really lead humankind out of this mess." If business and industry must lead, who will lead business and industry? Unless somebody leads, nobody will. Why not us? In the next section of this series, we will look at the current measures that companies use to address this transformation pressure. And you will see why these measures and the embodied mindset are not solving the problem.